Yes, sir.
I guess my question would be, I mean, given that, like, I agree with you about health federal government is too large and it's growing too quickly, what concrete suggestions would you make? Like, are there any specific programs you'd like to see cut other than just political lifestyle expenditure?
Right. I don't think there's a single discretionary line item in the federal government that can't be cut. I'll give you an example. When I was working in Washington in 1978, the Department of Energy was a brand new department. It had just been created in August of 1977. James Schlesinger, who went on to become CIA Director and Secretary of Defense, was then the head of the Department of Energy, and the whole department was in one building. Its mission was to lessen American dependence on foreign oil. Since that period of time, in 30 years' time, this organization has grown to 16,000 full-time employees, more than 93,000 contract employees, and a budget of $24 billion a year. Now remember, its mission was to lessen American dependence on foreign oil. It hasn't even come close to doing that. So you've got a massive bureaucracy. You'd have to say, gee, if we got along well without that before 1977, maybe we could get along with a lot less of that after 2009. If you look at every single agency, the government wants to take over the automotive industry, it wants to take over the banking industry, it wants to take over the insurance industry, it wants to take over the pharmaceutical industry. It continuously wants to start new things rather than stopping and doing a good job with the things they've already got. Let me just take you down memory lane here. Fannie Mae is insolvent. Freddie Mac is insolvent. Social Security is insolvent. Medicare and Medicaid are insolvent. When you look at the track record of things that the government has started, and these are all multi-decades. Some of these organizations are now 67 years old, and they're bankrupt. President Obama recently made an argument that on the healthcare legislation and said, you don't need to worry about these medical insurance companies going out of business. They're going to be just fine. And his proof statement was, look at Federal Express and UPS. They're doing great. It's the Postal Service that's having problems. Well, the Postal Service has been around since the 1700s. How could the Postal Service be having problems? It does $60 billion a year. It processes about 160 billion pieces of mail. And it's a monopoly, it's a stable business, this thing should be throwing off cash. But if the post office is in fact having problems, then the government should fix the post office before it takes over other industries. Figure out what things have to be done by the government and do them as well as you can, rather than always starting new things and not finishing old things. I think that in addition to term limits, because a lot of the people that I was referring to before as abusing things. John Murphy is another example. Do you know this guy's the second-ranking member of Congress? Been there for over 45 years. And for 10 years, he's been siphoning off money from the Treasury to build a private airfield right next to his home. He siphoned off, there's no disputing these facts, he siphoned off $150 million. Somehow or another got the rest of the Congress to go along with this for an airfield for one. Now, that's not a public servant. And look at the messages that sends to the whole rest of the government. So we've got to shrink the government, and it's got to start with the executive and the legislative branches. I think every congressman should take a 20% pay cut, because what we're going to be having to ask the rest of the government to do, leadership starts at the top. You've got to be willing to do it before you can ask the people that work for you to do it. So 20% pay cut, the size of these congressional offices has got to shrink. They are so much bigger today than they were when I was working on Capitol Hill back in 1978. They're much bigger. And a lot of the people that are working in Washington in these offices are there to help the congressman get reelected. If we had strict term limits, a maximum of 2 terms in the Senate, a total of 12 years in Congress, and then you go back home, like our founding fathers did, then they wouldn't have to worry about having massive staffs that are there to keep them in power. So we've got a 20% pay cut in salaries for congressmen, a much deeper pay cut, much deeper cut in office expenditures, and you say, this is serious, we are on an unsustainable path with this debt, it's going to hurt us in ways that's going to really hurt you guys. We're old enough now that it won't hurt us, but it's certainly going to hurt our children, and it's going to hurt all of you. We cannot stand this path. We've got to shrink the size of the government It's got to start with the leadership.
Well, you mentioned that you would want to cut out this massive energy bureaucracy, but that's 100,000 jobs right there that just is gone.
Right.
So what do you say to those 100,000 people that are now like, oh, well, now I don't have a job, how am I going to buy my food? And, you know, great, you might have saved a lot of money for all of America, but for me specifically, now I'm out of work.
Right. The transition is going to be painful. We have to do it. We simply have to do it. And the way that you do it is, you know, think about this. There's 300 million people in America. Okay. There's a little over 100 million taxpayers in America. To get rid of 100,000 jobs in a pool of 100 million, that ought to be able to absorb 100,000 people. And the way that you do it is you lower capital gains so that businesses have better access to capital, cheaper. Capital is such a scarce resource for businesses right now. Even the banks, you know, the Federal Reserve has lowered the lending rate to zero. It's literally at zero for banks. And today there was a Federal Reserve meeting and they held the rate at zero until the next meeting. But banks aren't lending. And equity capital is very scarce. But that's ultimately how you create jobs. You've got to free up finance. And if companies are able to get access to capital, then they start developing new products and they start hiring people to build those products. And that's what we've got to get off this dependency on the government to sort of be the employer of last resort. And the way we do that is we've got to shrink the size of the government, we've got to go backwards, and as painful as it will be for some people, we've got to trust the system. The system has always worked. And we're slowly wrecking it with just this enormously toxic burden of government.